Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And to round out the week, we actually got some good news for Xbox as Square Enix essentially confirmed what fans have been requesting for a very, very long time. Now, I actually think that this is pretty good news for Nintendo and PlayStation as well. I don't think a lot of people look at it this way, but I will explain why here in just a little bit. And then also, we got some more updates for the PlayStation 5 Pro. I know a lot of people are still iffy on that console, but it will be out next week, so we're going to get in all of that as well. Let's go and get things kicked off though with Monster Hunter Wilds, as its beta is available now and it's getting off to an extremely fast start. Now, I think this is also important information in context of a topic that we'll talk about later, but I mean, wow. The Monster Hunter Wild beta has already reached 463,000 concurrent players on Steam. Now, this is already a bit higher than Monster Hunter Worlds, which reached 334,000 players, but a lot of people have pointed out that, this is a free beta. So, technically, we do need to see how this translates to the full release. But, if I'm to make a prediction here, I think that this has a very good chance to surpass Monster Hunter Worlds for two different reasons. One is because the Monster Hunter series has gained a lot of popularity since the release of Monster Hunter World. Previously it was massive in Japan specifically, but now the Monster Hunter series really is just massive worldwide. And then also for two, people sometimes kind of forget this, but Monster Hunter World didn't have a simultaneous PC release date with its console counterparts. So that'll also be a big change for Wilds as it releases on Steam day one, and yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance that Monster Hunter Wild will open up as a top 25 game ever in terms of concurrent players when it launches on Steam next year. Now, in order to do that, it'll need to reach at least 414,000 concurrent players, but I think based off the beta here, that seems very possible. Now, we also got another new game release that you can play today, but this instead is for mobile phones, being Pokemon TCG Pocket. This launched here in the last day or so, and I've been playing it myself. It actually seems pretty good. I mean, it's kind of stingy with its booster packs, as you can only open one every 12 hours for free, unless you use items to speed things along. But hey, that's mobile games for you. They are predatory in how they get your money. But the cards are beautiful, and its battles are a lot of fun. This is probably the easiest way to jump into the Pokemon battling card scene. You can easily add friends for private matches, and you can also do random battles in beginner or advanced groups. Again, it's easier than ever to do Pokemon card battles, and I think a lot of you all are probably aware of this. I've always been a huge fan of the Pokemon series, and I've collected a lot of cards over the years, but I never actually battled them until now, and I'm actually really surprised by just how fun it actually is. So I definitely encourage you to try it out if you like the Pokemon series. It's free, or kind of, so, why not? Okay, so let's go and talk about the PS5 Pro here for a moment, because we actually got a couple of different updates. One is for its review embargo, and I think that's what a lot of people are waiting for. I keep saying it, but Sony just didn't do a good job at showcasing its differences compared to the base PS5. And given its high price tag, we're talking $700 to $800 for a console, that is unheard of, so it's a little hard to justify a purchase for the vast majority of people. So for those that are on the fence, it'll be nice to see some of those early reviews next week before its official release. According to Tom Henderson, PS5 Pro unboxings are set for November 4th, and then reviews will be available on November 6th, which is one day before its official release. So hopefully those reviews can answer some of your questions or concerns. And I will say, I do have one pre-ordered myself, so as long as I keep my pre-order, I'll give you my honest impressions after I've had some time with it. Unfortunately, I'm not lucky enough to get things early like a lot of other people, but if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, though, it was also revealed that the PS5 Pro started development before the launch of the base PS5. Now, this was revealed by PlayStation CEO Nishino, and he basically said that last generation they had success with the PS4 Pro because it's not just about highly engaged customers, but new PlayStation consumers were also buying into it as well. So they've been exploring a PS5 upgrade for the past 5 years, and I can understand how some people might look at this and feel maybe a little bit burned by their early PS5 purchase, but I mean, I don't think any of this is necessarily overly shocking. Console development takes a long time, and companies are constantly looking at how they can upgrade. That doesn't always necessarily mean that a company will go through with a final product for retail, but even still, they're always working on something behind the scenes. And the fact that Pro consoles had success last generation, I think most of us in the know were at least aware that another Pro edition seemed fairly likely, to say the least. Now, is it needed? That's a different question, but I think we definitely knew that there was a possibility. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on over to some Xbox news, as Square Enix pretty much confirmed what a lot of fans have been hoping to hear, and that's that they will be moving over to more simultaneous releases going forward, including, yes, Xbox consoles. I mean, they've suggested as much in the past, but I've still seen a lot of naysayers kind of go against this online. It seems like we just need that 100% confirmation, and, well, now we have it. This comes from Yoshi P, and he said this about the upcoming release of Fantasian, which is a game that I'm very much looking forward to. He said, this time, the Xbox Series X and S version will also be released at the same time. From now on, Square Enix plans to increase the amount of titles releasing simultaneously on each platform. This is close to the first part of that, so we'd love for Xbox users to play it too. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be an occasional game that misses out on a platform, but they are without a doubt following Sega's example. Square Enix is moving away from console exclusivity, and even though he specifically mentioned Xbox here, I do want to point out, this is also good news for PlayStation and Nintendo. I think people tend to forget that Square Enix didn't only work with PlayStation exclusively. Square Enix Nintendo has produced a lot of exclusives together. Games like Live Alive HD, Octopath Traveler, and Bravely Default all immediately comes to mind. And with this news here, we might see less of that in the future as well. Hypothetically, let's say if they're to make a Bravely Default 3, which, I surely hope happens, then, yeah, with this news, there is a chance, for the first time ever, that it could be multi-platform right out of the gate. And then, of course, the Final Fantasy series. By all indication, Square Enix is done, D-O-N-E, done with their PlayStation exclusive relationship. Now, I've said it before, and I'll go ahead and say it again here. That relationship favored PlayStation a lot more than it did Square Enix. We're going to talk more about AAA budgets here in a bit, but Final Fantasy games are very expensive to make, and Square Enix has publicly acknowledged that Rebirth and Final Fantasy 16 sales numbers were below expectations. Modern AAA games are just very expensive to make. They need to sell millions upon millions of copies just to break even. So by releasing them on more platforms like they did with Final Fantasy 15, which sold 10 million copies, that's more than Final Fantasy 7 Remake, Rebirth, and Final Fantasy 16. So it's proven that that could give them a better opportunity for success. So I fully expect them to eventually port Final Fantasy 16 and the 7 remakes to Xbox, and maybe even the Switch successor if possible. Now that's the key word, if possible. But there is a chance. Now, as for Xbox, Square Enix has already teased a Final Fantasy 16 Xbox version multiple times, and then going forward, I fully expect future Final Fantasy games to launch simultaneously across all platforms unless there's already a deal in place. But for the most part, it definitely looks like Square Enix has wisened up to the fact that, yeah, being a multi-platform company comes with some benefits if you're a third-party company. You might want to make use of all of those platforms rather than just limiting yourself to one. Okay, now one last thing before we go. Let's go talk about Dragon Age: The Veilguard. There's been just so much back and forth for this game online, and that immediately happened as soon as they revealed its gameplay earlier this year. A lot of Dragon Age fans were very upset about its art style change and character designs, and then there's also the culture war stuff that's happening, and that's bringing a lot more attention to its launch. So there's a lot of eyes on the Veilguard to see if it can succeed or not, and now that it's officially out, we do have an early update, albeit I think both sides needs to kind of refrain from jumping to any kind of conclusion based on these numbers. I'll explain why here in just a moment, but for right now, if you look on Steam database, it's so far peaked at 77,000 concurrent players. Now, I 100% expect that to rise as we progress through the weekend, as more people have time to play it. Historically, people do play more during the weekends, but so far, I'd say this is solid, albeit not necessarily overly impressive either. And that's the reason that I said I think both sides needs to kind of calm down before they jump to any kind of conclusion. I mean, 77,000 at launch is neither bad or overly impressive for a AAA RPG of this caliber. Now, I think it has a good chance to surpass 100,000 over the weekend, but I mean, if you look at something like Dragon's Dogma 2, which released earlier this year, that reached 228,000. Then there's Starfield from last year, that reached 330,000, and that was also available on Xbox Game Pass. So, given the Dragon Age franchise is very popular, Inquisition sold 12 million copies. So, this is a big-time franchise, and it's coming from one of the most renowned RPG developers of all time, being BioWare. And then you also have to consider that the Veilguard has been in development since 2015. And the reason all that's important to understand is because that likely means that EA's expectations for this game are high. So the question is what we're seeing right now good enough for EA? Or are they expecting it to put up similar numbers to some of the other games that I just mentioned? I mean, again, like we talked about earlier, you have to remember that a lot of these modern AAA games needs to sell millions upon millions of copies just to meet internal expectations because they're just so expensive to make, especially if they had a long development cycle. I mean, I just mentioned that with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and 16. Those games did not meet Square Enix's expectations despite them selling 3+ million copies right out of the gate. And then if you look at something like Star Wars Outlaws as one such example, Insider Gaming reported that Outlaws sold 1 million copies in its first month. Yet Ubisoft has publicly acknowledged that it sold below their expectations. And when I look at Dragon Age Veilguard, I think it'll easily sell 1 million copies, and it'll probably do that within its first week if it hasn't already. Again, though, is 1 million good enough to meet EA's internal expectations? That's the question. And that's why I think people need to just kind of calm down and see how this plays out before they put their foot into their mouth. Let's kind of see where it's at in a month or so from now, and then whatever side you sit on, then you can make your comments. For now, though, I think people might be jumping to conclusions a little bit early. I'm just being realistic with you all here. But what we do know is that Dragon Age appears to have gotten off to at least a solid start. And like I said, I think it has a good chance of eclipsing 100,000 over the weekend. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to hit that subscribe button and peace out.